I did a due diligence on a space-based data center about a month ago, right? A bunch of people from companies you've heard of before are trying to put a redundant data center in space. I'm like, what are we doing?
Welcome to Warrior Money, the show devoted to supporting our brothers and sister veterans. I'm Patrick Murphy.
And I'm Dan Kunze.
Today, we are looking at aerospace, one of the most critical sectors in our economy and national security, and how it's going to relate to you. Why? Because aerospace isn't just some big machines and bold missions, from fighter jets to satellites to commercial space. It's about jobs, 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 and innovation and the future of defense. So listen, as for veterans, this sector offers opportunities that align with the skills, the discipline, and the mission-focused mindset that you developed in your service. So let's get after it. All right, big question.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, so listen, when I look at the really aerospace, when you look at that, it's right now roughly about a $200 billion market. It's going to go to basically a $900 billion market within the next 9 years. But that's just on the aerospace. Not even talking about the manufacturing, which is about the same size of that. You're in this space. Walk us through what you do and why it's so critical.
I think we're all in this space, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I think we can all say what we do, right? But if you have a cell phone and you use the cell phone to have GPS, you are in the aerospace,
right.
The aerospace industry, right? If you're concerned about where your plane's going to be when you're flying, you're in the aerospace industry as well. And so what I think is really amazing is that the advance of critical capabilities, because of companies like SpaceX, like you just got to give SpaceX a tremendous amount of credit, because what they're doing now is truly pushing physics and astrophysics and engineering forward to make outer space more accessible to everybody. And behind that, you've got Rocket Labs, you've got Firefly, you've got NordSpace, you got a whole bunch of other organizations that are growing up now to create the space economy or the outer space economy. But what that'll also do, and there's a cascading effect, like all of the components and all of the engineering and all the physics that go into the space industry are also supportive of the aerospace industry, where our planes fly, the communication methods that we have, the way we navigate, the way we think about what we can do in space. That all becomes because we've graduated from one domain to the next domain.
Right. And we look at domains. Yeah, domains like you're talking about land, air, sea, space, and cyber. Those 5 domains where, again, even in the government sector, we compete against competitors, and we compete with them in space now, big time.
Totally true. We compete against them, and the amount. So you're right. Like we can talk about it as an economic value, right? So there's going to be about $1 trillion space economy within the next 5 years, by about 2030. What will really explode that value is when we go from having hardware in space to we create finished product or derivative product in space, right? So when, this is going to sound crazy, but when we have like space-based manufacturing and space-based healthcare and space-based pharmaceuticals and other things that happen because they're derived from space, it's going to blow your mind at how fast that's going to compound. One of the reasons for that is compounds from a pharmaceutical perspective, just for example, they mix differently when they're in space, right? So there's a different component to that. I did a due diligence on a space-based data center about a month ago, right? A bunch of people from companies you've heard of before are trying to put a redundant data center in space. I'm like, what are we doing? Yeah. So the reality is, like, once there's an economic value, a true economic value from a derived product in space, that means that the whole economy is going to change, and I think shift north. Or shift north, shift to the state, you know what I mean? But like the other reality is there's an emerging ecosystem of companies that are responding to, if we're gonna make launch cheaper, we're gonna use reusable rockets, we're gonna have satellites in orbit. How do we bring them back to Earth? Yeah. Like what do we do with stuff that we make in space, with stuff that we have in space, and how do we bring them home? And companies like Outpost Space and a few of these other are making really interesting inroads into like the full life cycle of mission space operations.
Yeah, and listen, we're both hockey players, and when I teach this at Wharton, I always tell my students, like, always think about what's in it for me, because that's what these folks, whether they're student or listeners out here. So if I'm a veteran right now, and I'm listening to Warrior Money, right? Yeah. And I'm liking and subscribing, I'm sharing it, right? Why should you care? What's in it for you? What's in it for you is whether you need a job or not. Maybe your brother or sister does. Maybe your sons or daughter does. Your nephews and nieces, right? And so when you talk about aerospace, when you look at North America, we get about 42% of market share on aerospace right now. But you look at where that's growing, that market is growing 8 to 9% every year. So like a hockey player, you got to, when someone asks Wayne Gretzky, how are you so great? How'd you know where to pass the puck? He goes, I didn't pass the puck where people were. I passed the puck where people were going to be. And that's how I got so many assists.
Every conversation I have with anybody, you're either in the AI economy or you're in the space economy. That's the economy that you're in right now if you want to be in a growth economy. And then what I mean by that is also all the subcomponents of each of those economies, right? That doesn't mean that everything has to be the sexy front end of a ChatGPT or an LLM, right? You need to make semiconductors. You need to make energy sources. You need to make things that enable the economy of artificial intelligence, right?
Yep.
And then you also have to make things that support the economy of space, right? So when we get better propulsion, when we get better engineering, when we get better reusables there, that'll have an impact on both economies that aren't so sexy, but as well as here. And I'd really rather be at the bleeding edge of things that are interesting and making my money there, especially when I'm early in my career, than trying to languish in a career that's kind of past its prime. That I think is the true lesson. Like, right? If we're talking to transitioning service members, and you're trying to figure out, hey, I got this fresh start in the civilian career, whether it's 4 years or 8 years or 12 years or 20 years. What do I go do? And the question should be, what part of the economy do I have an interest in that's growing the fastest that I can attach myself to? You can't do anything if you're going into an economy that's dying. There's very little you can do to create the momentum behind it. But what parts of the economy have a wave behind it? It's artificial intelligence in space, and I've got to give credit to the Trump administration for both the AI action plan that they've created, as well as SPD3, which started it during the first Trump administration, but also the focus that they're putting in the space economy right now. It's really impressive.
Yeah, can you walk us through what did the Trump administration just announce with the Commerce Department specifically, if you don't mind?
Yeah, they're going to elevate so there's a whole bunch of disparate organizations with the United States government that are all getting after the problem of space. Like, how do we regulate it? FAA. How do we track it? How do we do it for commercial organizations versus defense organizations? And how do we build out this infrastructure, right? It's been traditionally done by the United States Space Force, right? So back in 2017,
Guardians.
There you go. Before the Guardians existed in 2017, the Trump administration, through Vice President Pence at the time, created the Space Policy Directive, which mandated certain rules, right? That was going to be in the Office of Space Commerce, Department of Commerce. What's happened over the past several years is they've now elevated that office, or they're in talks to elevate that office to an actual direct report of Secretary Lutnick in the Office of Space, Department of Commerce, to create the Office of Space Commerce as a standalone organization. That's a huge deal because that really prioritizes both the commercial industry as well as the defense industry and allows them both to grow the way they need to. Back to your original comment, which is China's not playing around on AI in space. Like, they're launching thousands of satellites per year, and we want to be ahead of that because that's where the puck's going.
Right. And I think, again, why our veterans should care about this.
Yeah, sorry.
No. But listen, it's because this is where the jobs are going to be. And so we all know as a veteran, whether you're going to devote your career to this, which is your number one wealth building tool, is your career. Also, is your VA home loan, our last show.
It's your day job at your home.
Right.
It's where you live and where you work.
So even if it's not your day job, but it could be where your investments are. When you said, hey, listen, that's where I'm going to make my investments, right? I mean, I look at, T-Gen, like I invested, you gave me a tip about 3 months ago. He said, dude, I put $5,000 in it. It's now, I call my guy, it's now worth $17,000, right?
More than $5,000.
Right? So I'm like, man, I tripled my money. This is great, right? But part of that is like, I have a portfolio approach, right? And part of me is like, hey, this is great.
I don't have a portfolio approach anymore, though. I have a portfolio, distributed portfolio of things that I care about. I just want to say this real fast because at some point in time, you've got to start focusing on making bets in areas that you believe are going to win, right? And I firmly believe that over the next 20 years, my bets in AI, my bets in space, and my bets in real estate are gonna pay out, right? So I have a portfolio as it relates to things that I'm interested in, but where I put my money and where I put my time are in the areas that I believe are gonna win, right? I think before, and this is one of the lessons that I learned by losing money. If I invested in areas that I didn't know anything about, I almost always lost money. Like, it was never good for me. But if I stayed within a pocket and I understood that pocket and it was big enough and growing fast enough, then I did really, really well in that pocket. And that's what I'm continuing to do. And I just so happen to know AI, space, and real estate really well. But that is where I've been spending my time. And I think for veterans, Philip Martin, who was our guest from Coinbase, was on the call, and he said, "Hey, how do I even know what I don't know about what I don't know about? Meaning, like, how do I know about the crypto
Yep.
industry? How do I know about platforms, right?" I continue to think like that's where you just got to spend your time being curious on podcasts. You need to go out here and like try to
Right.
figure out like I don't know anything about space. I didn't know anything about space when I joined, but you learn quickly, especially given the skills and experience you have from the military.
Yeah, yeah. It's like and to boil it down, as our favorite quarterback Jalen Hurts says, keep the main thing the main
The
thing.
main thing, the
right?
main thing,
If
yeah.
you try and do everything and be something for everybody, you're not, right? You got to
Yeah.
focus like a bulldog on a bone on certain industries and invest in it. So, before we go on break, what are one or two things people should read if they want to learn more about the aerospace industry or your work with frankly with space or Leo Labs, or a podcast or
You know, I think the way that I think about the way I've been thinking about this, and I'm a history major, right? So I care about primary documents, secondary documents, and all those other things. Like, look at the policy directorate and policy documents, as dry as it is, that are coming out of the White House on artificial intelligence in space. Like, we are creating industries right now in real time. If you're not going to do that, I think you need to listen to what SpaceX is doing. And anything or anytime you hear SpaceX, I have a notification for SpaceX whenever I have my Google News or whatever news I have. Like, whenever they say they're doing something, the whole world's paying attention to it.
Yeah.
It's not just me. It's not just me paying attention to it. Like, everybody's paying attention to it. So that's a good thing, and it's a bad thing. The bad thing is you can't be over reliant on one organization to do that, especially a commercial organization, right? But I think if you pay attention to an industry or vertical, hey, I'm really interested in this. I want to see what the government's doing from a regulatory perspective. So cryptocurrencies, artificial intelligence, space, banking, regulation, like that's all changing really fast right now. And then secondly, what are the leaders in that industry thinking? Like, what are they talking about? Like Elon Musk, what does he care about? What is JD Vance saying about these things? They're the sorts of people that I'm really interested in hearing about.
yeah. All right. Well,
And it's Los Angeles.
yeah.
So SpaceX is in LA. So it's like, just you got to know what's going on down there too. It's a space hub between Colorado.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. We covered the aerospace matters and why veterans are well positioned to succeed. But how do you get your foot in the door? And who and what you should be doing before you get that foot in the door, the prep, so when you get there, you can break it down. We'll break it down with actual steps right after the break. All right, welcome back. Let's discuss the real-world path from service to aerospace careers. Whether you're interested in engineering, operations, logistics, cybersecurity, or program management, this industry needs you. People who can work under pressure, think critically, and adapt quickly. We're going to discuss the ways that you can leverage your military background, you can build the right network, and translate your experience into skills hiring managers in aerospace are looking for. So let's talk about that. And like you're on the bleeding edge of this. You know, what advice do you get if people who want to get into this industry and say, hey, I want to make my mark in this growing industry that's going to grow 8-10% the next several years?
Yeah. So the first things first, know that it's immature. Like never, like I'm going to compare a couple of things. And we talked about a list of it, but we didn't include sales. Like there are not enough people in the space industry, the aerospace industry that know marketing, that know sales, that know program management. There's not enough people that know the core functions of these jobs because they're still worried about engineering a phenomenal product, right? Like we are still in the hype cycle of things at a really early stage as it relates to what's possible, right? That's the first thing. That's the very first thing to think about, right? Like I spent the last 15 years of my career in software and enterprise technology. And the comparison is all the people that are going to make their money in software, really, really make their money in software, have already made their money in software.
Yep.
Like the CEOs of these organizations, the board members, the shareholders, like there was a curve where the software was eating the world, all that other nonsense, right? But now, like AI is eating software and space is starting to eat other industries, right? So when we're starting to think through this like hype cycle, this curve, like you want to be not in industries where people have always made their money, but you want to go in industries where people are. So the first thing to believe is, hey, I belong. And two, there's not enough people to do the jobs in the first place, right? So why is that uniquely interesting for veterans, right? Because the critical components of the space industry and the critical components of the artificial intelligence industry have got to have people that understand hardware. you have to understand what hardware does. And who better to know what hardware does than somebody that's actually worked on hardware?
Right.
Whether it's a Abrams or a Bradley or a fighter jet or name the platform. It's just a platform that can then be converted to the next platform, because everything is a hardware dependent organization, because software integrates into hardware in this new environment that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So first things first, you got to know you belong there. There aren't enough people, so you got to show the willingness to do it. You got to learn it, but you're uniquely situated to do it because you can program manage, and you know how your way around a piece of hardware.
Yeah, and I think that's what people don't like. We say if you see it, you can be it, right?
One of our best. I'm sorry, what I say is one of our best friends, Brian Masters, over at he's a chief warrant officer. He just texted me the other day. Dan, I was just a mechanic. How do I get all these things? It's because he understands how things work and how things move, right? Like that's just what we have, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Listen, I served on the board for several years on BAE Systems, right? They are the world's premier, aerospace defense company, right? And for me, I looked at folks on the ground, whether it was when you look at, where they were building, obviously vehicles in York, Pennsylvania, or whether we were doing intel work, or where we're doing components for fighter jets.
Mm-hmm.
You look at, what those professionals do, and you look at the pipeline of people coming in, and the lack of hey, we really got to invest in this,
Totally.
the defense base.
Yeah, totally.
Is struggling, and we got to get them off the struggle bus and make these investments and let people know. Just like, hey, you can go be an apprentice and go in the trades if you want. You don't necessarily have to go to college, but if you go to college or you want to do whatever, you want to go into engineering, here's other paths for you as well.
One of the number one concerns that I have around the semiconductor industry moving back to the United States, just my number one concern, right? The Taiwan culture has created excellence in building semiconductors, right? U.S. does not yet have that culture, or we have not yet instilled that culture. It is a critical component to this. So my point to you is, it takes generations, it takes time to culturally do really, really well at some of these things, right? We had we won World War II because of our production capabilities coming out of Europe, right? We were the best in the world at it. That spun off all these different brands, and then over time, we let a lot of those jobs and a lot of the industries offshore, reshore, go someplace else. I'm sorry, not reshore. We need to reshore because those jobs coming home again, and COVID really, I think, accelerated this. We need a labor force and a workforce that understands how to build stuff here in the United States.
Right.
Who is better trained to do that? I'm asking you, who's better trained to do that?
Right. I mean, because you look at the numbers. I mean, and
we train our own people.
Right. Yeah. And part of it is it's because Americans were willing to work longer hours than most. We have a good work ethic, et cetera. But, historically, we won World War II because of the arsenal of democracy, right? And you look at now the arsenal of democracy is really going to be in AI, in the shipbuilding, and there's things that we need now because we want to be the arsenal of democracy because we have shared values with our partners versus other folks who don't have America's best interests at heart.
And the reality is the technical skills that you learn in the military that you've already been taught on are translatable to a shipyard. They're translatable to a factory floor. Like, these are the things that we need to bridge gaps for, that everybody doesn't have to leave the military to go get an MBA to go read a spreadsheet, right? You don't have to do that. Like, I don't like spreadsheets. I don't even like to do them. But and ChatGPT, frankly, can do a spreadsheet for you. We need people that actually know how to build something. And I don't know a more qualified group of people or segment of people that are more biased to doing that than our veterans. We train you, you learn it, you go to AIT, you come out of AIT, you do a technical job for a few years, you're really good at it. Go find those jobs, and employers have to open those jobs for those folks.
Yeah. And I think part of it is that, the veteran, it's incumbent on you as a veteran, especially if you're transitioning, to translate those successes that you've done.
Totally. You're really good at that, by the way. You're really, really good at that.
Yeah, and show them, listen, this is what I've done, and this is how it translates to you. I am going to solve your problems.
Yeah.
This is what you need. And you mentioned it earlier, and I think people think sales, and they're like, sales. It's like, listen, sales, like, I was good at sales because I was, busting tables and I wanted my waiter or waitresses to get good tips because that meant I got some tips. When I waited tables in the graveyard shift at age 16, in high school, from 11 at night to 7 in the morning, I was hustling, right? And when those drunk people came in at 2 a.m. in Perkins Family Restaurant, I was serving them pancakes. What can I do? I was cracking jokes. Hey, did you guys pick up anybody? And you know what? I was their buddy, but I knew they were going to tip well, right? And you gotta translate. And it's so funny. Years later, I then waited tables at Olive Garden. Once someone said to me, like, "Hey man, you're really good. You're number one at add-ons." I'm like, you know why I'm good at add-ons? One, I sit down. I ask what they want an appetizer. I recommend a bottle of wine. This wine. I didn't know anything about wine. I was like 19 and a half. I don't think I don't even wine I drank was Boone's, right? At the time I was poor, but. When dessert came around, I didn't say, "Hey, would you like to look at the dessert?"
Chocolate lasagna.
I brought them the dessert tray. It's hard to say no to the cheesecake or the triple fudge chocolate. And I just think that veterans will go above and beyond for mission accomplishment if they have confidence, if they know, hey, if you join this team, if you're a part of this industry, you can change the world. You will help us accomplish our goals, and it'll help you and your family.
There's a lot of stuff I've been reading on Yahoo Finance and all the different pages, right? I hope that I get so senior that every job becomes a sales job. Whether you're a lawyer,
right?
Whether you're an accountant, whether you're an aerospace engineer, whatever you are, I hope that you become so senior in whatever organization you are that you are the best salesperson for the organization, because that's essentially what the CEO's job is. Right. The CEO's job is to present a vision for the company or vision for the organization about why it's a wonderful thing. It has to convince investors why your growth story makes sense. It has to convince customers why you all should buy yourselves, right? Everything internal, everything administrative is the job doing the work, right?
Yeah.
At the front end of it is, how do we communicate, how do we build, and how do we grow? That is what the most senior person in an organization is. A managing director of a private equity firm or venture firm. The lawyers, they're all, at the end of the day, as partners, they are all salespeople responsible for bringing a book of business in.
Yeah, listen.
If you don't do it, you're broke.
You and I have been at Wharton Investor Day and stuff, but we help with the Wharton Veterans Club, and they said, "Hey, could you help us teach a sales class here?" Why? Because sometimes it gets too academic. You want people to understand it is an art and a science. And it's really critically important. I know we're both passionate about sales.
I actually think this is one of my most passionate topics that we've talked about. Right?
And by the way, like a historical note, the largest pharmaceutical company in the world is Johnson & Johnson. Their last CEO that made over $20 million a year was a West Point graduate, Army Ranger, Wharton graduate. What did he do? Sales for Janssen.
He was a sales rep.
Yes.
And then a lowly sales rep. Went to school at nighttime, from what I understand. He went to the night MBA program.
Right. And I do think that that's the grit that our veterans have, that they're willing to do whatever it takes. You got to show them the path. Yeah. You got to show them this is what right looks like. And if you see it, you can be it. So you got to point to those brothers and sisters that have crushed it out there.
Totally.
All right, that wraps up this episode.
Can I say what's going on about that?
Yeah.
I have been asked over the last 3 to 6 months to come on more and more frequently talking about sales as a career and profession than I have ever before. Like both Wyatt and Kyle, who do the Sit Reps page, Andrew Garcia, who does the Arena. These are all guys that are trying to recruit for young salespeople coming out of the military. Yep. There's an understanding now that's changing right now. It wasn't always like that, but people now understand that that's changing.
Yeah, it's all about sales,
and it's where the money is.
BD business development. I used to tell people, like, I was a hell of a lawyer, all this stuff, but I was also a good lawyer because I brought clients in.
There you go.
And I made the ask. As they said in that great show, the great movie, ABC, always be closing.
And it's coffee's for closers.
That's right. So, all right, that wraps up our show. So listen, subscribe, and review Where Your Money on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube as well, wherever you hear podcasts. We're find us at Yahoo Finance. I'm Patrick Murphy.
And I'm Dan Kunze. I drink coffee.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.